Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Pewter postgame show where, for the sixth time in 7 weeks, we are discussing a loss by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This one by a score of 27-20. The Bucs dropped this one to the Colts in a game where, once again, costly mistakes did the Bucs in, and similar mistakes that we've seen week in and week out reared its ugly head again. We're going to break it all down. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joined with me is the face that runs the place at pewterreport.com, SR, Scott Reynolds. And Scott, I'm running out of patience. I tweeted earlier today that the Bucs are going to win. I felt good about that. And it just felt like ever since Baker got injured on that QB sneak on the first drive of the game, it just felt like it was a domino effect, and it took all the wind out of the Bucs' sails.
Yeah. I thought the Buccaneers were going to lose. I was the only Pewter reporter to pick them. I certainly have not been right all year long. I mean, I've had I've taken a couple of L's as well. Did not want to be right today, Pewter people. I would have much rather have been passed in the standings. I got to call it like I see it. And I just think this team is in the downward spiral. And I think they caught lightning in a bottle playing Will Levis, and they had two guys to shut down against the Titans, Derrick Henry and D-Hop, and that was it. And I think that was lightning in a bottle that they caught in that game, and they didn't even really blow out the Titans. It wasn't a close game, but it wasn't like they stomped them. I think you can go back to the Lions, the Bills, the Texans, the 49ers.
6 of their last 7.
Yeah, they're in the downward spiral right now. And for those of you who are, anxiously awaiting Todd Bowles to be fired, it's going to happen. It's going to happen at the end of the season. Now, I'm saying that not as a fact. I'm saying that as I believe it's going to happen. If I know something, I'm going to write it and make a story out of it in Pewter Report. So I want to be very clear. Like, for example, when I hit play, or I should say when I hit publish, seconds after the Bucs lost to the Cowboys in the playoff game, saying that Byron Leftwich was going to be fired, if I know it, I'm going to write it.
Yeah,
I'm not at the point where I'm going to write it yet, but I've seen this movie before. I know how it ends, and this is kind of classic Raheem Morris spiral right here, where I think they might win maybe 2 or 3 more games. But if you are of the kind of Buccaneer fan that at this point in time wants to see the team lose, so Todd Bowles gets fired and the Bucs have a better draft pick as a result, then you're going to be happy, because I think that's what's on deck. Unfortunately, I don't say that with any glee or anything, but it's just reality, Matt. Like you said, they've lost 6 out of 7. There's no evidence to suggest that they're going to win out or win, 5 out of their next 6 games, or whatever's on deck to make a run. So right now the Buccaneers, and I'm waiting on the results of the Cardinals-Rams game because that might affect it. But right now the Buccaneers have gone from having the 10th overall pick in next year's draft to the 7th. And as I said in a Pewter Pulse video a couple weeks, or maybe I guess last week when I did the video about Todd Bowles, is he going to stay or go? The Glazers need to see progress. And that might not even be winning the NFC South again, Matt. It might not even be getting another home playoff game. I mean, I don't think this division implodes to the point where an 8-9 Buccaneer team is going to win it again. I think the winner is going to have 9 wins, and I don't think the Bucs are going to get the 9 wins. But having said that, and we'll talk about the division race in a second, I think they have to win a playoff game, because this is just a repeat of last year, right?
Yeah, without question. Scott, I'm at the point, again, 6 of their last 7 that they've lost. We can keep saying that. I mean, they play the Panthers next week. Let's just say, hypothetically, if they lose to the Panthers next week, but yet find themselves in a situation because the Falcons play the Jets next week. Jets still have a great defense, so anything can happen there. Saints play the Lions, and the Lions have not looked good the last 2 weeks.
Right.
Clearly, the Lions will be favored in that. If we find ourselves in a situation next week, and it's a home game for the Bucs, where they lose to the Panthers, and somehow the Falcons lose to the Jets, and the Saints lose again, and the Bucs are still only a game out, I think you might have to fire Todd Bowles after next week if they lose to the one-win Carolina Panthers. I'm not even joking.
No, I agree. I think, Matt, the Glazers have enough savvy to realize that if this is a lost season, like, let it crash and burn and get the draft pick. Because let's say you fire Bowles. Who's going to be the interim head coach? Harold Goodwin?
I mean, technically it would be Harold Goodwin.
Okay.
But what does
that
do?
So Harold Goodwin's the interim head coach. Larry Foote or Casey Rogers is the defensive coordinator now calling plays. And maybe you win 1 or 2 more games as a result, but you're still capping out at 7 wins on the season.
Yeah. And
instead of picking maybe 5th or 6th, now you're picking 8th. What's the difference? I think at this point in time, and again, I've just seen it, the Glazers are going to let this thing crash and burn. It's either win the division and win a playoff game and stay, Todd, or at this point in time, we're going to ride it out and we're going to go get that draft pick, go get another head coach, go get another quarterback, and hit the reset button.
It's just a funny strategy of, like, Todd Bowles is so bad at his job that it's good because they'll end up getting a top 5 pick. It's very funny.
They let Raheem Morris lose 10 straight at the end of the 2011 season and didn't fire him until after the season. So it's kind of like, hey, serve a purpose, Todd. Either win the division and get in the playoffs and then win a playoff game and stay, or ride it out, keep losing, and further our draft pick status. So I think that's either way, the Buccaneers might win in this scenario.
Yeah. I hope one day that the draft kind of gets changed to a lottery a little bit, where, like, it's
it would make it more interesting, right?
Not just the worst team gets the first pick, but you take the 10 worst records and then get a lottery bowl. Or I had another suggestion in the Bucs media room one day. You take the 2 worst teams, so it'd be the Panthers and whoever's the second worst team. They play each other the same week of the wild card round, and the winning team gets the first overall pick. So
that's
you
good.
have incentive to play. And
I love that idea. Hell, man, that's a hell of an idea.
Why not?
I love it.
It provides a little incentive to win.
Yeah.
But speaking of incentive, if you super chat us, you cut the line, and we'll get straight to your comment, or as quickly as we can. So thank you to Bucs Basement for this $5 super chat, who says, fire Bowles, chicken, you know what, head coach on display all throughout the game, not calling a timeout once again, not challenging, and then settling for a field goal. I thought it was hilarious that yet again the Bucs went into halftime with all 3 timeouts from Todd Bowles. And the thing at the end with Bowles not calling a timeout, I'm curious to get everyone's opinion on it, because at first I didn't think it was the biggest deal, because you saved those 3 timeouts.
You're talking about at around the 3:45 mark, right? In the fourth quarter? Okay.
Correct. Now, I don't think having all 3 of those timeouts justifies Dave Canales running the ball with under 2 minutes to go on a second down and whatever. And then they lost the play on the next day on the strip sack. But I mean, that's just, that's just another example of this team. This team is hella consistent, because on the first drive of the game, they had the ball at the 1-inch line, and they had a false start penalty on Aaron Stinney that drove him back 5 yards. And on their last drive of the game, right before the 2-minute warning, they had an illegal shift that negated a first down that would have gave the Bucs a new set of downs at around midfield with 2 minutes to go in the game. So they were consistent from beginning to end with just making costly mental error after costly mental error. And of course, it was the biggest difference in the game. There are so many different things you could point to as why this team lost today.
Yeah, and it's frustrating because you keep seeing the same type of mistakes happen week after week. It's maybe a different player, right?
Yes.
Than last week, but it's still the same type of mistake. And this team just doesn't have any margin for error. Folks, we talked about this back in week 1. If you're with us here on the post-game podcast, when the Buccaneers beat the Vikings, upset them back in week 1, and I knew they were going to win that game, but it took them 3 turnovers. They had a 3-0 turnover margin on their side, advantage, right? To beat the Vikings by 3 points. That was a huge tell as to the margin of error for this team in terms of coaching, in terms of talent on the roster, et cetera. And then the next week, Matt, you called it correctly. It's like, hey, that Bears game was a 3-point game with just over 2 minutes left, right? And the Buccaneers had the turnover margin advantage in that game as well. No turnovers for the Buccaneers offense, and they'd taken the ball away. And it took a pick 6 by Shaq Barrett at the 4-yard line to beat the Bears by 10 points. So that shows you the margin for error, even against bad teams. And they have to play almost near perfect football to win. And they're just not good enough, and they're not coached well enough. No. And the play calls aren't dialed up enough to do that. And if you look at Shane Steichen from the Colts today, went forward on 4 fourth downs?
Yeah.
And I think made 3 of them?
Yeah, got 3 or 4 of them. And they ran the same play twice, Scott, on 4th down, where at different routes, but where the Bucs sold out for the run, the Colts ran play action, and their guy was wide open because not only did the Bucs sell out for the run, which I don't totally blame them for, but then they weren't able to get to the quarterback after selling out for the run. And not being able to get to the quarterback was another issue in this game. But we got a super chat from Cali Bucks. Thank you, Cali Bucks, for this $1.99 super chat, who says Mayfield forgot how to dump the ball down to White. Yeah, Rachaad White was a non-factor as a receiver in this game.
2 catches, 10 yards.
Yeah. Ran the ball pretty well, but
100-yard day.
100-yard day for Rachaad White. Not to mention on the ground, the Colts had 155 yards, and it was a 2-headed monster between Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss. And even to the point where when the game was done, the game was done after Baker got strip sacked for the second time, and that was done. But even then, you had your stupid 3 timeouts because Todd Bowles didn't want to use them. They knew. Everyone knew the Colts were running the ball. They didn't even get to 3rd down, Scott. They got the 1st down after 2 runs. I mean, just
when everyone knew what was coming.
The Bucs secondary and the 2nd unit and the 3rd unit, just bad tackling. I mean, it's very telling that the defense was just putrid today when your top 3 tacklers were in whatever order: Carlton Davis, Antoine Winfield Jr., and Zion McCollum.
That's right. 10, 10, and 9.
3.
Winfield 10, Davis 10, 9 for
McCollum. The Bucs keep implementing this defense, Scott, where the cornerbacks play 30 yards off the ball, so they can throw these. It's not even screens. It's it's 3rd and 4, and they just run a 4-yard Barton hook essentially, and they get it easily because when you can't see the cornerback on the screen on the TV, that's an issue. That's an issue. But we got another super chat. Blueberry, thank you for the $6.98 super chat. Don't know what currency that is, but anyway, thank you. As they say, I got to stop getting up at 2 a.m. to watch the Bucs get their asses handed to them. It's going to take 4 cans of Celsius to get me through today. Blueberry, even though it's early in the morning, I greatly appreciate you watching this show and
Singapore
giving us
dollars.
a super chat. Oh, Singapore. All right. Cool. Sorry the Bucs couldn't get you in a better mood this morning, but Celsius definitely will do the trick, and we'll still provide great content despite the Bucs not putting a great product on the field.
There's always next year. And speaking of next year, remember, in January, that's when the offseason starts for the Buccaneers. It's not going to go into February. It's going to be January. And make sure that you stay tuned to PewterReport.com and our Pewter Report podcasts here at Pewter Report TV. Nobody covers the offseason like us, from coaching changes, and they are coming, to free agency, to the draft. We're at the Senior Bowl. Already made our reservations for the Senior Bowl. We'll be at the Combine again. So for the entire offseason, stay tuned, stay locked to Pewter Report. And we're going to have all these moves covered. So,
Bucs Basement with the $2 super chat says today's tape, and thank you, Bucs Basement, says today's tape is going to be used against Devin White in free agency. I mean, once again, the Gardner Minshew could have won a Heisman Trophy today. the way that he was playing, had the rushing touchdown. Yeah, great photo there. Devin just running after him, and then just a little whoop, and he's able to get by. Devin White on the play. Just another reason why Levante David is so valuable to this team and why Devin White will not be getting $20 million a year. I don't think he was the worst problem on this team.
No.
Because also, got to give Devin White credit. The Bucs had 3 quarterback hits on the day. Now, JTS had a sack where he was unblocked. But credit to him, because we gave Yaya that credit when he did it last week.
Yep.
Credit to JTS for getting a sack. Kalijah Cansey had the sack later in the game. Those were 2 quarterback hits right there. The only other quarterback hit that the Bucs registered, if I'm not mistaken, was Devin White. So at least Devin did that when no one else could.
Yeah, and it's damning, Matt, right? When you have one side of the ball that is the head coach's side, and that's the side that's letting you down just as much as not scoring enough points on offense, right? I mean, 27 points to Gardner Minshew and the Colts. And like as you said, 150 yards on the ground for the Colts ground game. And that's on Todd Bowles, right? That's his side of the ball. And at some point in time, I know the players got to make plays. And you got a couple starters out, but you got to win with scheme. You got to outsmart the other guy. And as you said, Matt, Todd Bowles is in the business of collecting timeouts, like children collect rocks. Is really what it is. It's amazing. I'm blowing up our group chat with about 3:45 left, just saying timeout, Todd, timeout, Todd, timeout, Todd, timeout, Todd, timeout, Todd, to no avail. He couldn't hear me. He's got the headsets on. He wasn't getting my texts.
Todd Bowles loves to collect timeouts like Thanos pursuing the Infinity Stones. It's like he thinks if he has all the timeouts, that I don't know, it'll make his team better, which clearly it does not. So.
Well,
anyway,
what makes it better are super chats, and we appreciate the one from Buck Standard here.
Yeah, thank you to Buck Standard for this $10 super chat, who says the NFC South is truly abysmal. First team to turn the page has a head start in getting things on track. I'm rooting for Saints to win the division, so they're stuck with Dennis Allen and Carr for another season, LOL. Buck Standard, that's actually a fantastic idea because no one in the NFC South is going far. Now, maybe you'll have the crazy Seahawks and Marshawn Lynch over the Saints type of wild card game that, happens here and there. But, no one from the NFC South is going to the NFC Championship game this season. So, why not? And the Panthers tried to start over last season, and they're nowhere better towards it. I mean, they might start over a head coach again as well, which is kind of crazy after one season. But, I mean, the NFC South is just – it's so intriguing, but it's also quite difficult to watch.
I just put it in the chat, a Pewter Pulse I did like a month ago. It hasn't changed. It's about the coaching carnage coming in the NFC South. I mean, Matt, I think you're going to have the division winner, unless it's Todd Bowles, saves his job. And I think the other 3 coaches who don't win the division in the NFC South are going to be gone. I think Frank Reich's going to be gone. I don't think the Bucs are going to win the division, so I think Bowles is one of them. And then, like the Buck Standard says, either Dennis Allen wins the division and gets to stick around as a consolation prize, and Arthur Smith is gone, or vice versa. Arthur Smith gets to hang around for one more year by virtue of hanging a banner in the practice squad or the practice facility, and then Dennis Allen's gone. So we'll see.
Thank you to Paul, a.k.a. Florida Dream House, for this $5 super chat, who says, there are bigger holes to fill on this roster than quarterback. If Light stays as general manager, he should. He can win with Baker, but must address those needs, plus a new head coach, in my opinion. I mean, this team can win with Baker, but I don't think he's the long-term solution for the Bucs at quarterback. I think he's very much showing that he's kind of a stopgap quarterback for this season and next season. And because for every good thing Baker does, then he, has an idiotic interception in the first half, throwing into quadruple coverage. And it's like, I think we've seen the best of Baker. And the best of Baker
it's just not good enough.
The best of Baker is not good enough to justify when you get the worst of Baker Mayfield. And we've kind of seen both. I don't think we've seen the bottoming out of Baker Mayfield by any means, which also leads me to ask, what was up with Baker's injury? Because, he gets injured, Trask comes in, Baker's immediately back, and I guess he was able to shake it off, because at first I'm like, this dude can't move at all. He's going to get eaten up in the pocket, and he still got sacked 6 times. And then he was able to move. So, how much did that injury really limit him in the game? But then he also threw 2 touchdowns to Mike Evans. So I respect the hell out of Baker's, determination, his toughness, his will to win. I think there is a spot for him in the NFL somewhere, like I think in an alternate universe, Kirk Cousins goes down and Josh Dobbs isn't available. Like Baker Mayfield would be a great guy to like plug and play in that situation. Or you just have a monster team around you and your quarterback gets hurt and you need a guy to keep it going. But I think Baker Mayfield could be that guy. But do you really want Baker Mayfield? And Paul, I guess I'm asking this you as well. And obviously you're a Baker guy. Like, do you want Baker being the quarterback for the Bucs for the next 5 seasons? No, I don't think so. I think this season and maybe next season you draft the quarterback and you let Baker start the season. That's kind of how I view Baker right now. He does some things good and then other things quite poorly.
I don't know that he's done enough to warrant anything more than a 1-year deal by any team in the league either. I think he's better than Andy Dalton, but he's not going to get Derek Carr money. He's not going to get Geno Smith money, I don't think, because part of it's winning too. How many points are you putting up on the board? How many wins do you get? It's not all in the quarterback, but you're kind of largely responsible for those 2 things. And that's really how quarterbacks are judged. So I'm with you, Matt. I think a new head coach comes in here and probably passes on Baker Mayfield and wants to draft a quarterback. That's what I think is probably going to happen. If you can re-sign Baker and have him be that veteran mentor and bridge guy, that's great. I mean, the Buccaneers did that back in 2009 with Byron Leftwich, who was the bridge earlier in the season, got enough losses, and then Josh Freeman came in the mix later in the year. I don't know that Baker wants to play that role, though. I think Baker wants to be a starter somewhere and wants to be the guy. And the other thing, too, is just today, not being able to see escape lanes. I mean, he's just over 6 feet tall, right? Yeah. And that does show up. And you know what? That's not Baker's fault. It's his parents. He's as tall as he is. But 3 batted balls, right? I mean, that's a common occurrence.
Scott,
those are 3 incompletions.
I'm sick and tired of the batted down pass. I get it. It happens to everyone in the league. The Bucs defensive line got 2 today.
Right. But it happens to shorter quarterbacks more often.
It happens every single week. I mean, you go across the league, you don't see quarterbacks get the ball knocked down as consistently as Baker Mayfield does. I'm absolutely sick of it. It takes away drives. I understand there's nothing he can do about it, but damn, it really kind of sucks the life out of you.
It really does.
Every single time you see it.
Yeah.
Let's keep these super chats moving. Thank you to Ryan Giles for $1.99 super chat, who says, "Who's out the door faster, Bowles or Devin White?" I think they go at it together. I think hand in hand, arm in arm, they're out the door together.
Yeah, I mean with Todd, he's going to get fired if this continues, right? I mean, and it's going to. We see the train coming. We see the light, like in the tunnel. We know what we've seen this movie before. We know how it ends. Okay.
Yeah.
He's going to get fired probably the day after the season ends for Tampa Bay, and then Devin is not going to be re-signed in free agency at all. He's not coming back, and whether Todd's here or not, he's not coming back, and so. There's a chance some team out there is foolish enough to sign him to a decent deal that maybe nets the Bucs a compensatory pick next year. I doubt it. I would be shocked if Devin White gets anything more than a 1-year, maybe $5 or $6 million deal next year. That's just what the tape says. So, I mean, for him, I hope he gets more. But I don't have any teams that I root for in the NFL, so he's not going to my team because I don't have a team. So, but I don't want to be the fan of that team that gets this guy and thinks they're getting some superstar player on the cheap. They're not. I mean, but
that's what he acts like.
Correct. The equivalent would be he goes to a team and they sign him for a cheap deal, and it would be the equivalent of the Bucs saying, "Ooh, we got Ryan Neal for 1 year at $1.5 million. This is a great.
He had
deal.
A great PFF grade.
Right, exactly. In this case, why he doesn't have that.
Yeah, and again, this shows why PFF's grades are a flawed system.
Yeah.
Shaggy, thank you for the $5 super chat. Says Bowles continues to give the brain pain. Yeah, I mean, I think the most aggravating thing, and you kind of already talked about it, Scott, but he is a defensive coach. So you think you would correct a number of things on the defensive side of the
Yeah.
football, but it just aggravates the hell out of me that every single time these defenders are so far back off the line of scrimmage, and you're generating no pressure at all from the defensive front. I mean, you even tried something different today with Yaya lining up next to Vita Vea and next to JTS on one side. You just get nothing from that group. Like Vita Vea and Kalijah Cansey are your two best pass rushers.
Right.
Take away positions, take away where they line up. That should not be the case.
Yeah.
With the two interior guys being your best pass rusher on a weekly basis. Shaq Barrett has just gone not completely absent because he gets a couple strip sacks here and there. Yeah. Shaq Barrett is not playing like an outside linebacker one.
He's gone too. I mean,
he's gone.
There's going to be this is going to be a completely different team next year.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think they should pretty much just have Yaya and Anthony Nelson just signed that contract.
And Kalijah Cansey on defense, and that's it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, might as well. So,
yeah. Well, listen, here's one thing that will make your brain better, and I know this because I'm a Celsius drinker. Every single morning, I have Celsius, and I start my morning. I've given up coffee because I enjoy Celsius, and you know what, Matt? I was super sad last night after my Kansas State Wildcats got absolutely throttled by the Iowa State in the snow in Farmageddon by Rocco Becht, my former South Pasco Predator. Congratulations, Rocco. That's Anthony's son. They beat the crap out of my Cats last night. It was embarrassing. But you know what? I woke up. The sun came up. Kind of. It's cloudy all day, but the sun came up, and I had a Celsius. And I had an orange Celsius. You see it there with the cosmic vibe. And I was instantly awake and instantly in a better mood. That's what Celsius does for me. It gets me going, gets me in a great mood. There's the cosmic vibe, which is the new flavor. It's a tropical punch type flavor. I love the sparkling lemon lime. That is a fantastic afternoon drink for me. Some days I need two. And if you want to make the afternoon, the time where you have a Celsius, maybe you need to pick me up at work. Maybe you're going to get some energy before you go work out in the afternoon. That lemon lime is a fantastic flavor. There's also the Oasis Vibe, which is one of my top 3 flavors as well. Matt, I'm going to let you take over the rest of this because I have to say the word bodega when you ask me where I can also get a Celsius.
Yeah,
so take it away.
Right. So the cool thing is Celsius has a store locator. We actually use it since Indy has been a point of topic since they played the Colts. When we were in Indy, we used the Celsius store locator. We picked one up at our local Walgreens that was there, but you can pick one up as well. Could be a Walmart, Target, 7-Eleven, health and fitness store, or if you're lucky enough, it might just be your bodega.
Bodega.
And once you keep going to your bodega, and you know you love Celsius and you want to get more because you heard us talk about all the great flavors that they have, you can buy it in bulk. You do that by going to Amazon, click on the subscribe and save. I'd recommend getting that variety pack because variety is the spice of life. You can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. It could be a week, month, quarterly, yearly. Just make sure you're drinking Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drink of PewterReport.com. Shout out to Celsius. Love that last comment. That was up as well. But let's get back to these super chats. We got a $3 super chat from Raymond Fuse. Or super sticker.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that, Raymond. If you have another comment, we're happy to get to that as well. Next,
also, while you're looking for that one, I just want to say we just crossed the threshold last week for 12,500.
Yes, we did.
Subscribers for our Pewter Report TV station, our channel here. So please join the growing list of Pewter people that subscribe, and also click on the notifications button. When you do that, whenever we go live with the show, whenever we post some new content on the channel, you're going to get notified of that. So it's a great way. It's just 2 quick, free little buttons to hit subscribe, hit notifications, and that will clue you into all of the awesome Pewter Report content we have here on Pewter Report TV.
That is right. Thank you to Dante Mason for the 1999 super chat. Dante says, "It's me, Dante again. Call me crazy, but we don't getting no push from Barrett, JTS, or Hall. What's going on with the D line?" Yeah, I mean the D line. I asked of them to kind of like pick it up with stopping the run with Levante David not being there, but they clearly did not listen. I mean, Logan Hall had a nice pass breakup, but he doesn't provide much for this defensive line. It's
just
really
so sporadic, you know.
Yeah, it's really just Vita and Kalijah Cansey. You know, Will Golson's in for a handful of snaps. I don't really know how much of an impact he can have on the game. I think he drew a holding penalty, though.
He did.
Yeah. And then, the Bucs just allowed the Colts to convert on 1st and 20. Well, it took them 4 plays, but they had him at 1st and 20, and the Colts were still able to convert. So, yeah, I mean, the D-line's an issue. When you have Vita and Kalijah Cansey, it clearly erases a lot of the mistakes that or just lack of play that you're getting from other guys. But, yeah, I think the pass rush is definitely a huge issue and will be addressed this offseason.
Yep, I agree. Too sporadic of plays in there. You're going to see some roster shuffling and turnover, influx of new guys next year. The Bucs will have some money to spend, so they're not going to go bargain shopping all the time. They'll be prepared to throw some cash out and try to lure some better defensive linemen next year, depending on what scheme they're going to be playing. They may not be in a 3-4 next year.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe Robert Saleh will be the defensive coordinator for the Bucs next season. Timothy Fitzgerald, thanks for the $2 super chat, says, not taking a timeout after Baker got hurt was so bad. Respectfully, I disagree with that because the time already stops when the trainers come onto the field and they look at Baker. So Kyle Trask had plenty of time to like get himself ready, knowing that he was going to play. And why would you waste a timeout because a player is coming off?
If you use a timeout, can you then bring an injured player back in to the game? I think that might be what he's inferring, and I'm not sure if that's the case. I think it's the case, but I don't know if the Baker was ready to come in at that point.
Yeah,
because he was getting checked out in the blue tent.
Yeah, I think you just have to miss a play.
Yeah.
Which would have been the handoff to Rashad White. Now, again, I guess if Baker's in, maybe you run something different. Or maybe if you just don't go off sides on 2nd down, you don't have the ball at the 5 instead of the inch line.
Yeah.
Rashad White gets that inch and scores a touchdown. But,
it's not a super chat, but we do have to address this. Tristan Wirfs had a bad game. He gave up at least 2 sacks.
He did.
He's hurt. There's no excuse. He's out there. You got to play. But there's a reason why in the pregame, Matt was talking about Tristan Wirfs versus Samson Ebukam was because that was going to be a tough matchup today. Ebukam is a guy that is, he can be hell on wheels when he's in pass rush mode, and he was today. Got a couple sacks, including that strip sack. So, difficult game for Tristan for sure. He's not invincible.
No. Shout out to Raymond for another $2 super chat. Appreciate you, Raymond. Khalif Young with a $4.99 super chat says, do you think teams have caught up to Bowles' scheme? Really good question. Yeah, I think so. I mean, Gardner Minshew threw for 251 yards today. Let's remember, he's a backup quarterback, and he looked super, super comfortable against the Bucs defense. I think the Colts did a pretty good job picking up a lot of the blitzes that the Bucs tried to run, and we've kind of seen these blitzes over and over again. It's it's Devin up the A-gap. They love using Antoine Winfield Jr., so I think teams are ready to key in on Antoine. If
they'll bring Izzy off the edge, and he never gets home,
So, listen, I mean, Todd Bowles was a great defensive play caller, but this season it's, again, kind of proving the contrary.
Yeah.
We all saw the Texans game.
Yeah, and Matt, to your point, look at the interception today and the would-be interception by Winfield. Both of those throws were literally thrown right to Carlton Davis and right to Antoine Winfield.
Carlton Davis made an interception today.
Yep. What's the saying? A blind squirrel?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, both of those interceptions, or the interception, the other one should have been picked off, but it was a nice pass breakup by the receiver. But both of those were really thrown. They were errant throws. They were thrown right to the Buccaneer players. It wasn't like Carlton Davis had super tight coverage and stepped in front and picked off the pass from Josh Downs. So that's a scheme thing. These defensive backs are never really in position to have tight coverage. I think maybe the tightest coverage we saw today. I mean, I think Davis had a really good day. I'm going to say Carlton Davis had a pretty good day today.
Yeah.
He did have a couple of tight coverages on Michael Pittman because Pittman's not that fast of a guy. But the D. Delaney pass breakup on 4th down, I mean, that was really tight coverage. But it's just so far and few between that the Buccaneers defensive backs are stuck on receivers like glue. Usually they're playing soft zone coverage. They're allowing them to catch the ball and they rally and tackle, but you're giving up yards. So there is certainly a level of predictability. Just ask Brock Purdy. Okay. He had a perfect quarterback rating last week. So yeah, there's definitely some predictability going on.
Last year it was the offense that was too predictable. Now it's the defense this year that's too predictable. And things don't change soon. Many of these coaches, pretty much all of these coaches, will be out of a job. So thank you to Joshua Finland for this $4.99 super chat, who says, coming back from halftime, why wasn't Vita not on the field almost the whole drive? Does any other DC do player packages?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of we got to keep them fresh. We got to rotate our guys. I just remember back in the day when Rod Marinelli was the defensive line coach, when Monty Kiffin was the defensive coordinator. Hold on. Back in my day, we saw Warren Sapp play almost every play, and that's just how it was. It's like whether it was like Reagan Upshaw or Chidi Hanatu, at defensive end, Brad Culpepper and Warren Sapp. Or even the Super Bowl year, Simeon Rice just didn't come off the field, right? Warren Sapp didn't come off the field. Booger McFarland, Greg Spires, they didn't come off the field. There was a player that it was kind of called the super sub. In the Tony Dungy days, it was Tyoka Jackson. He was the fifth defensive lineman. He'd be the guy to come off the bench, and you could sub him in anywhere. He could play defensive end, he could play nose tackle, he could play the three technique tackle. And then after Tyoka left and went to the St. Louis Rams, I believe, then it was Ellis Wims, like during the Super Bowl year and all that. Ellis was the super sub. And I just don't know why you're not playing your best players until they need a break, until like they need a breather. It's a little maddening to me because you kind of get into a rhythm. And then all of a sudden, it's like you're not out there for like an entire series. Then you go back in. And I just think it wrecks continuity. It just does. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'm like, put the four best guys on the field and let them play until they tap out and need a break. And then you put a sub in. Hell, that's the way we did it in Pop Warner. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think there can be like a fine balance. If they're not in today's NFL, Max Crosby does it. He plays all the time. Yeah. But if you're not going to play the guys 100% of the times, I don't think it needs to be like, oh, well, Vita only played 60% of the time or whatever it is. Like, you got to be in there for the biggest moments. You need your best players to show up. And I
agree, but play Vita 70% of the times. Let him show you he can't play that, right? Is Greg Gaines better? That's what you're saying. You're saying Greg Gaines is as good or better because we're playing him 30% of the snaps or whatever. Does he deserve that? I'm not picking on Greg Gaines. I'm using it as an example. So to me, I don't know. I just don't get that. Ride your top four and play them. This is, first of all, you're playing in a dome stadium, right? Second of all, even if you're playing in Tampa, it's, what was the high today? 72 degrees. It's not that hot. It was overcast. These guys are professional athletes. You don't see platooning on the offensive line. Yeah. Those guys play every single down.
Maybe they should have, though. They allowed 6.
Yeah, maybe they should have.
Let's keep the super chats moving. Thank you to the Bucs Standard for a $20 super chat, who says Todd Monken, probably my top choice as the next head coach of the Buccaneers. Yep. But both Hiro Evero and Bobby Slowick have coached both sides of the ball. I like the idea of a head coach with that experience, but priority is finding the right leader, CEO, regardless of their expertise.
Todd Monken's a hell of a good choice. I want him to be the offensive coordinator this year. He had the opportunity to. He turned the Bucs down, went to the Ravens.
I think he made the right decision.
He made the right call. Yeah, it's like job security. John Harbaugh, Todd Bowles,
Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield on his third team.
Yeah, Todd made the right call. We'll see. He's worth pursuing for sure. And he's coached here in Tampa. Glazers know who he is. They like him. I think Jason Light knows who he is. He likes him. So, yeah, it makes sense to me. Checks a lot of the boxes. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be an offensive-minded coach.
Has to be.
I think you're right, Matt. It has to be at this point.
Speaking of offense, there's a lot of great offense. You could pick defense as well, but a little more slanted towards the offense. When you're playing underdog fantasy, If you use that promo code Pewter, PEWTER, gets you a first deposit bonus when you play with Underdog. The Pick'em game is a ton of fun. You pick at least 2 players, 1 from each team, but you can go all the way up to 5 and win all the way up to 20 times your money. You're just choosing certain stats, whether it's over or under or higher or lower on certain, receiving yards or passing touchdowns or fantasy points, whatever it is. It's a great way to enhance the viewing pleasure of if you're watching a game and maybe it's a team you don't care about or a team you're not as familiar with. You can get in the game with Underdog Fantasy. Check out their in-season tournaments as well, their rivals. And, of course, as I said, their pick'em games are a ton of fun. So that's Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code Pewter. That's PEWTER and get a first deposit bonus when you play that game. Moving on to Marcellus Ray. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat, who says, does it bother anyone else when you see teams able to get easy completions, but the Bucs can't? Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother storyline in of itself, Michael Pittman could be wide open. Yep. The running back could be wide open. But, Chris Godwin has 4 catches in the game. Yeah. Mike Evans played pretty well. I mean, he was wide ass open on that first touchdown. So at least they got that going.
It happens occasionally. But it just seems like the Bucs offense is an adventure when it doesn't have to be, right?
Yep.
It just seems like hairpin turns and potholes and, leaping over this embankment when it just get on the road and drive like other teams do. It just seems like this team goes off-roading in a non-off-roading vehicle on offense. It's an adventure. I'll just say that.
Yeah. It's just, there's so many things that you could point to of issues on this team, and they find I feel bad for Aaron Stinnie. I mean, he had the false start penalty, but the holding penalty they called him in a terrible, awful call. And what even pissed me off even more is that they show the ref that made the call, and he's 20 yards down the field. It's like he was playing cornerback for the Bucs, all the way down the field. Yeah. But he's going to make that call at the line of scrimmage because the D lineman dove at the runner. That wasn't a holding play at all. So I do feel bad for Aaron Stinnie because he got kind of gypped there. Anyway, Eric with the $4.99 super chat. Thank you, Eric. Says, maybe Brock Purdy is on our roster, but bad coaching decisions are keeping him on the bench. Same decisions that aren't calling effing timeouts. Yeah, we got asked this question during the live stream of when do you give Kyle Trask an opportunity to play? And we're not at that point yet, but at the same time, if they keep losing, do you, again, just see what you have with Kyle Trask? Because Baker's not going to get a big contract, and you can still re-sign Baker if you wanted to. So I don't know. I mean, I do kind of want to see Kyle Trask at some point just to see what you got.
Here's my educated guess on this, just from me kind of maybe being in the know. With Kyle Trask, Mike Evans doesn't want to see what Kyle Trask is all about. Chris Godwin does not have an eye on the future. He's not looking ahead to next year. Same with Tristan Wirfs.
Yeah.
Right. So Baker Mayfield does not want to take any back seats to Kyle Trask right now, because every game he has is an opportunity to prove to the Bucs or somebody else that he's worthy of being a starter, which he desperately wants to be. He's this close to being Andy Dalton. Where you're just or Jameis Winston, you're a journeyman. You kind of reach that point where you're just a journeyman backup, and that's how teams are going to view you. And maybe the starter gets injured, and maybe you have a Gardner Minshew type moment. You can go 4-3 as a starter, as Minshew is now in Indianapolis. Maybe that's what happens. But Baker's a captain. I don't think that he would go to Todd Bowles or Jason Light or probably both and pitch a fit and say, what have I done? Look at my statistics, my touchdown interception ratio. What have I done to deserve being benched? And you could say, well, we haven't won enough. And then Baker could say, all right, well, here's, Tristan Wirfs given up 2 sacks, including a sack fumble to end the game. You're going to bench Tristan, right? He can go down the list, and Trey Palmer's still playing, and he dropped a huge pass that might have been a touchdown if he catches that. So you can play that game. The end of the day, they're going to play Baker Mayfield until they're mathematically out of it. And I think that means you might get a game or two with Kyle Trask. At the same time, there would be a push from within this organization, either from the front office or the coaching staff, to play Kyle Trask if they thought he was indeed better. Because this is the time where you say, we need to make a change. We're going with a spark, and we're going to go with Kyle Trask. If you're Todd Bowles and you believe that Baker Mayfield can't get the job done and you want to see if Kyle Trask does, that's not going to happen unless it turns out Baker Mayfield's injury is more severe. He can't play because the ankle swelled up overnight, and that happens. So we might see Kyle Trask next week. Who knows? But they're not at the point where they're ready to pass the baton to Kyle and say, okay, you're going to ride this out during the stretch. We're going to make a judgment whether you can be the guy next year or not. Because I think within the building, they already know that answer, and the answer is no.
If he would have thrown that touchdown to Chris Godwin, it could have helped his case.
Maybe. It would have helped his case, yeah.
Just a little bit. Meets McGee with the $5 super chat. Thank you to Meets McGee, who says, Devin White and Carlton Davis will play under Bowles for whatever team hires him as defensive coordinator, LA Chargers. And whoever we hire, please bring in teachers. That'd actually be kind of funny if Bowles has some disciples go with him to. I mean, because if Bowles does presumably get fired, like we all kind of predict is going to happen.
He'll be a DC somewhere.
He will be a DC. So it will, I remember when Rex Ryan became the Jets head coach, he brought over Bart Scott at linebacker.
Right. You bring over your guys.
Yeah.
Right.
So that would be kind of interesting, especially if it's a team out west like the Chargers. We're just let's check in on them.
Right.
And then it's Patrick Mahomes against Devin.
Devin would love that. Todd Bowles would be going in there. We need Devin. I need Devin so bad. Sign him to whatever it takes. And Devin would be like, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. And he already thought he was a superstar. Then, he's going to be in Hollywood. Jeez.
Right.
That'd be something.
Yep.
This one's not a super chat, but Pat Riley with some praise for Scott says, Scott Reynolds for head coach. I know you don't want it, but the fans and the people demand it.
No, you know why? Because if I became the head coach, then I would not be able to do the Pewter Report podcast. And on Pewter Report podcast, even though there's not a Victory Monday tomorrow, there is a thing at 4:20 we like to call. Whoops, wrong button.
Beauty Financial. Roll call. Yeah, roll call. We do this every Monday, win, lose, or draw.
That's right.
And we do it in the offseason as well. It's a great way that we interact with all of our fans. What we do is one of us goes on a diatribe about the Bucs at 4:20, and while that's going on, people chime in with where they are watching the show from. We put it up on the screen. It's always a great time because we have great fans in Tampa and the state of Florida, but also across the United States and across the world in other countries. In Europe, we had someone from Singapore watching earlier. So it just shows that our fans are the best, that we have fans all over, and we appreciate you guys. So, it's just something fun we like to do.
It's so cool when you tell us, hey, I made the live show today the first time, I always catch your podcast versions, but I made the live one. So make sure you attend tomorrow at 4:20 and participate in roll call. And let us know when we put your address up, or not your address, but where you're watching from.
Location,
Yeah, location. Let us know if you're a first-time live podcast viewer. That'd be fun to know.
We got a super chat of $4.99 from Tall Florida Guy. So thank you to the tall one. Says, so in 2024, do we blow up the defense, cut the high-priced veterans, and get younger? Excellent question. And I think for the majority, the at least the promising thing is the Bucs do still have a fair amount of young players around. Like Vita Vea, he's 28. I still think he's got plenty of tread left on the tires. But Kalijah Cansey was your first-round pick this season. Zion McCollum's only in his second season right now. I mean, Winfield is only in year 4, and he'll get that contract extension, hopefully. So there are young pieces to build around. Obviously, linebacker is a huge question going into the offseason. But there's still a fair amount of Yaya Diaby at edge rusher. There are guys that you can build around, in my opinion.
I think the key word is better, not younger, right? Like they want to get better players, whether they're 30 years old, whether they're 24 years old, they want better players. Just seeing a couple comments here. Bieniemy would be a great hire, but may not be gettable. No, do not want Eric Bieniemy. I don't think he's a good hire. I don't think he's a very good offensive coordinator. I think Sam Howell is doing a pretty good job in Washington for being under siege all the time that he is, but I don't think that's the case. So Bieniemy, I feel, is more attainable in Tampa than Ben Johnson from the Lions, or Todd Monken. What about the Miami OC? Well, the Miami play caller is Mike McDaniels. So he's kind of the magic man in Miami. He's already got a head coaching job, so I don't think he's coming down here. Long Lost Leisure always contributes. We appreciate you showing up, I think, just about every podcast Long Lost Leisure's around. Kyle Trask is under a cheap contract for 2024. If the season is over, it's irresponsible not to see what you have in the guy after 3 years. Yeah, I'm not saying that we're not going to see Kyle Trask, even if Baker Mayfield's healthy. I just don't think it comes until the Bucs are mathematically eliminated. And you know what? Unfortunately, Matt, that time's coming soon. Unfortunately, I think it's quickly approaching. So we'll see what happens. Brian Johnson, the Eagles offensive coordinator. Yeah, that's another option as well. There's going to be some options out there for the Bucs to consider, probably an offensive-minded guy. But if you're looking for a realtor, there's only one option, in my opinion, and that is Eric Gross in the Eric Gross Group. That's right, the official realtor of Pewter Report. Eric, like you, is a diehard Tampa Bay fan. He's also an avid Pewter Report reader. So that's where it starts, right? You want to have a relationship with your realtor because you're in it to find what's going to be your biggest monetary investments. So you have to know and trust your realtor. And what a great way to start that conversation than about how Todd Bowles needs to be fired, or are the Bucs going to turn this thing around and make the playoffs, right? It's a great way to do that. So what I'm asking you to do is give Eric a call today, meet him, greet him, and have him help buy or sell your house. And that is 513-907-4271. That's 513-907-4271. Visit his website, housesinfla.com. It's a great website. You can view their inventory. It's got a great layout. He'll help you find not just the perfect house for you, but the perfect home for you in the perfect neighborhood for you, because it all goes together like that. Whether you're looking to buy or sell, Eric is part of a network of 85,000 agents with eXp Realty, where they can help you on both ends of the transaction, selling your house and buying a new one, or buying a house and selling your old one. The Eric Gross Group will turn your dream of buying or selling into a reality. So no matter where you are in your homeownership journey, you're going to feel welcome at the Eric Gross Group, the official realtor of Pewter Report. Again, visit the website, housesinfla.com. So we waited for Baker Mayfield to show up, and I just got a text from Dan Lucas, who is our partner at WFLA News Channel 8, and they were waiting for Baker for like 20 minutes with the live feed on Buccaneers.com.
Yep.
And he never showed up, I guess, for the press conference, or maybe he's getting medical treatment, or maybe they went with the live feed and they shut it off and he went later. I don't know. We'll have to see. But it'd be curious to see what Baker Mayfield's status is for next week's game. That's one thing Todd Bowles said is we have to keep an eye on it, because that ankle really might swell up after tonight on the plane ride home.
So Jenna Lane said this about 40 minutes ago. Shout out to Jenna. She listens to the podcast. And she was at the game today. She said, she tweeted out, X'd out, whatever you want to call it. Baker Mayfield was limping heavily in the locker room and spent a significant portion of post-game getting treatment on it. He expects to be getting an MRI when he gets back to Tampa. And then in quotation said, adrenaline is a hell of a drug, he said, adding that he can feel it more now. So, one of those things, like you're in the moment, you're playing. I mean, that's a big question, obviously, moving forward. They're playing Carolina next week. So Baker's injury will be a huge topic of discussion for the whole week, and what adjustments can Tampa Bay make. Right. We got another super chat from Easy the Great, $1.99. Thank you, Easy. Says, this game showed how important Levante David is to this defense. Yeah. Unequivocally, 1,000,000% yes. I mean, he's the most important guy on this team. Well, on the defense, one of them. Yeah,
and Mike Evans too. I mean, Matt, where's this team next year without Mike Evans, right? I mean, he's, it didn't have a monster.
Chris Godwin ain't a $20 million receiver. I mean, he's just not playing it.
No, he's not. And you look at Mike, kind of a modest day, 6 catches, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. It was good. wasn't crazy, right? It wasn't 150 yards or whatever, but 2 touchdowns. That was the most significant number out of the ones I read. Where are they going to get the touchdown production? They're barely scoring 20 points per game now. Where's it going to come from next year, if not from Mike Evans? So I don't know how this team can honestly get better without re-signing Mike. And I think the great part is his age. He'll be 31 next August, so he's 31 before the season starts. And there really isn't a track record for, and you've seen the Cooper Kupp deal, right, Matt? You've seen these receivers get these deals, but they were signed in their late 20s, like 27, 28, not 31. So I think there's going to be a bit of a hometown discount for Mike.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's an opportunity for the Bucs to maybe get him back for little cheaper than maybe people might think. Maybe 20 million, maybe a little bit less. We'll see.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Scott, because I was just curious in general the other day. So I started looking up the stats of Hall of Fame wide receivers like Reggie Wayne and T.O. and Jerry Rice to see like when their stats really started declining as they got there in age. Because we're kind of reaching that with Mike. I'm not saying his stats are declining. And, each guy was a little bit different in different situations. But especially for like Reggie Wayne, who was mostly in one spot, and Jerry Rice is probably different because he's the greatest receiver of all time. But a lot of these guys, like even in ages 33 and 34, we're still putting up like pretty good numbers. Maybe not their prime numbers,
right?
But I think there is a balance to be
800 yards, 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, even a couple of 1,000 yards still too. So I think Mike, if you could sign him to like a 3-year deal, and again find the balance where both sides can agree. I don't think that's a contract that the Bucs would really regret, because I don't think you're going to see a crazy drop off in Mike until about 4 seasons from now. So, maybe they can do something like that. But, one of the major questions this offseason, for sure.
I agree. Another question from Meets McGee here, $2 super chat. We appreciate that. How many teams will be in the market for a quarterback next year? Well, that's a good question. I've laser focused on the Buccaneers, so I haven't really surveyed the landscape yet. I probably won't do that till later. But what I do know is this is a mega quarterback draft class. There could be as many as 6 quarterbacks drafted in the first round alone, probably as many as 10 or 12 by the end of day 2. That means by the end of the 3rd round. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks that are going to be drafted. And you're going to see a lot of teams, Matt, I think. Maybe Kirk Cousins, right, is this year's Derek Carr, right, where he gets that kind of big deal. But for the guys like Baker Mayfield and others that are kind of like, I'm interested in Baker, but I really kind of want to see what I get in the draft first. I wonder if there's not going to be a big market for Baker Mayfield because of that.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, you might have teams saying, well, we'll entertain maybe the best free agent quarterback after the draft, after we see if we land a really good quarterback in the middle of the first round, or if we're happy with the guy we ended up getting in the later part of the first round, or et cetera. So it's going to be very interesting. And a lot of quarterbacks in this year's draft class will affect the bargaining power of guys like Baker Mayfield and others out there in free agency.
Yeah, because there's so many questions with other teams too. Like the Rams, they got Matthew Stafford, but he gets hurt every year. I don't know his contract deal. But like, I get that they drafted Stetson Bennett, but if they can get a guy in the first 2 rounds, like
I think he's out of the league right now. He's like in a rehab facility or something.
Yeah. And who's the other one that I had in mind? The Steelers, for example. Like, are they already ready to move on from Kenny Pickett?
Right.
That's another situation with that. We won't really know until the offseason and teams start making moves. But what we do know is that we're going to have another show tomorrow at 4:00. So be ready for that, and roll call as well. In the meantime, make sure you follow us on all of our social media on X, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. We are at Pewter Report. And then our YouTube channel is Pewter Report TV. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave a comment. It helps grow our audience over at Pewter Report. That's going to do it for us this evening. For Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks, everybody, for watching, and we will see you tomorrow for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.
Better days are ahead. My nephew